All right, we're going to do it today.
Yeah, and we have a little competition right now. If you can support us, we have a goal of just getting 5. Let's just start off with a starting swing with 5. Our goal is to get 5 tonight. So,
5 what? 5 people donating, or $5, or 5 what?
Yeah,
what?
5. Yeah, 5 super chats, and we'll put up the chat, whatever you have to say.
Yeah, we will take it right to the priority level. Absolutely, we'll take it to the high priority level. All right, let's see who else is out there. Brian is with us here tonight. He's got his mug.
I've got the mug.
You got the hat, and you got the glasses.
You can have your own mug and hat.
Very good. Also, let's see. John Poleshnik is out there. There you are, Lake County Commissioner. Good to see you again. Good to see you, Commissioner. Good to have you with us here tonight. All right, so we've got a couple of really good guests tonight. So coming up at 7:30 is Jeff Skinner. Jeff is from the Ohio Register, and he is going to be talking about data centers and food, about the food that we consume. And some of it ain't really food, okay? So we'll get into a whole discussion with that. It should be a lot of fun. And then at 8 o'clock, Marly Hornik joins us. And Marly Hornik is from New York, not from Ohio, she's from New York. So we pull the talent everywhere, guys. And she is with RealAmerica.vote. That is the organization she's created. It's all about election integrity. And so we got to hear what she has to say on that, because there's a lot. The Save America Act is in the news big time right now. And we'll be talking about the Save America Act, and we'll talk about 2020, and we'll talk about all that junk that's been going on. I'm nervous because when we talk about the Save America Act, and I don't know if you guys have been following that very closely or anything, but when we talk about the Save America Act, who's the biggest person in the way right now is John Thune. John Thune is really clogging it up, and that's got me a little nervous. I'm a little nervous.
Any idea why Thune is blocking it?
Because he's a rhino. He's a big time rhino.
So he's a Republican that doesn't believe in election integrity. Is that what we're saying?
I can't really figure out why exactly he would be against it, but I know that he is. There's several others that are against it. It could have to do with it's all where they get their donations from. So if Thune is getting a lot of money, if he's getting a lot of money from these big corporations to fund his Senate career, because it takes a lot of money to fund your Senate career, they may be fully in favor of all of this illegal immigration coming in. Okay, so your bigger companies and all that, they're in favor of that because that's cheap labor for them.
So Thune is not really representing the people, his constituents, and really he's following through on what Ron Young says. The 2 top priorities of politicians is to protect themselves and get reelected. So he's willing to do anything, including selling out his country.
Yeah, you said it. You said it pretty well right there. Yeah, he's from South Dakota, I believe. He's in South Dakota. But there's others. John Cornyn is another one, and he's out of Texas. He's a senator out of Texas. Those two are like
how long has he been a senator? About 100 years or something?
They're all up there. Cornyn especially. I think he's in his 80s. He could be.
I think it's time to hang him up and go play golf or whatever. And thank you for your service. So we don't need you anymore. We need some real Americans, tried true Americans that are putting America first. It's not that complicated.
On the one hand, I'm really grateful that our Ohio senators, Bernie Moreno and John Husted, are standing strong with Donald Trump on the Save America Act. But we do have some local rhinos that have been pushing back. It was kind of shocking to see our so-called Republican Speaker of the House, Matt Huffman, say, I'm against Trump, I'm against the SAVE Act. So I'm grateful that our U.S. senators, Moreno and Husted, are not listening to Huffman. They're standing with Trump on this one.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. Say that again. Say that again, John. What did Huffman say?
Huffman came out publicly against the SAVE Act. He said that he viewed it as a government takeover of elections and that every state should be able to do what they want. and said he explicitly disagreed with Trump. So Matt Huffman's come out publicly against the SAVE Act.
John,
That's very
Commissioner, that's why Ohio was first in aviation and 47th in everything else. When you got leaders like Matt Huffman, it's really incredible.
Yeah, that's very disturbing. That's very disturbing if Huffman is of that mindset. Very disturbing.
Oh, he's said it publicly. It's been in the papers. It's not an if. He is.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for enlightening us on that. I mean, I was not aware
Joe,
of that. I was not aware of that with Huffman, but
Joe, I did
didn't
find
really look
something
into it too
out.
closely. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
I found out Ohio is number one in the country in something. Would you like to know what it is?
Walleyes.
They are
walleye fishing.
Yeah, they are number one in the state funding of public libraries by far in the country. We spend more money on public libraries than we do on the police and fire at the state level. Local government funds takes a back seat to the public libraries. They changed it in the last budget. And I'm hearing librarians all over the state just complaining like mad. They now have to increase the local property taxes to make up for that shortfall.
Libraries, huh? So that's like that's high on everybody's list of being number one. I could see, Ron DeSantis in Florida right now has got to be so jealous of Ohio. Saying, doggone it, I wish we were number one in libraries. Gosh, darn it. I mean, we're number one in everything else, but libraries, that's like everything, That's just like so important.
But to be clear, Joe, it's not that we're number one in libraries. We're number one in spending on libraries. And there's a very big difference between spending and quality. And while I love many of our local libraries, the reality of it is if you're homeless, if you can't afford your home, you're not worried about what book to take out next.
Yeah, and also the libraries have mission creep, Joe. And I mentioned this to the librarian in Geauga County, and I said, well, maybe, in 10 years, libraries won't really be needed, and maybe we should be paying an annual fee for a library. So if I don't use the library, I'm not paying for it. And she said to me, well, that won't work because we have a lot of parents that are using it as babysitting services, so the kids can have somewhere to do their homework. I'm not paying for babysitting services, so it's a problem.
It's a big problem, and enough is enough, right? Enough is enough. Enough. Enough is enough already. I've had it. I'm tired of being told that I've got to keep paying for the libraries and the parks and everything else. I've had it. All right, let's see what somebody chat away. We are building yet another new library that gives us 10 in a 50-mile radius. Wonderful. I didn't know people really use libraries that much anymore, though. It certainly can't be to go get a book. Because you can get everything online that you want. So it can't be going to get a book anymore. What is it, just to hang out, throw the kids in the library all day? And
if you want another statistic, I just found out. It was in the Cleveland Plain Dealer in the Sunday newspaper. They were quoting policymatters.org, and they said that the legislators, in their infinite wisdom of reducing the income tax, that reduction, since I think it was 2005, I believe it was, has cost $17 billion a year. And the only Ohio residents that are really making out with that is those that are in the upper echelon of earnings. They made, I think it was $60,000, I believe, I'm correct on that they were saving $60,000. People making $50,000 to $80,000 a year got a reduction of $800, and the people, I think it was under $40,000 in annual income, they had to pay more. They had to pay $35 more a year because of the legislators wanting to benefit the higher income, the campaign donors, That's who they're taking care of, and now they want to eliminate the income tax.
Yeah, they want to eliminate it. So it's at a 2.75% flat rate right now for Ohioans. But somebody was saying, I don't follow it that closely because I just input my information into TurboTax and it spits it out, so I don't really pay attention. But somebody was saying that, I don't know, you had to get to like $180,000 income in order for it to be higher than 2.75. So in other words, the only people that's really benefited would be those making over like 180 grand.
Right.
Which is ridiculous if that's the case. That is absolutely ridiculous if that is the case. I haven't looked into it too well.
Yeah, but it tells you the priorities of our legislators. They're not worried about the average citizen at all in the state of Ohio. So the Matt Hoffmans and Rob McCaulleys of the world, they're going to reap what they have sown, because the people are going to start speaking out.
Oh,
I think that they already are, Brian. There's a
out.
reason we're seeing such bad poll numbers for Republicans statewide. It's because the people are angry and they expect Republicans to be Republican. We're here. The only reason we exist is to cut spending, cut taxes, and make the American dream affordable for the average Jane and Joe. And if we fail to do that, there's no point in voting Republican. That's the bottom line. So I think you're seeing the people speaking out pretty loud and clear right now. Get back on track. Start cutting spending. Start cutting taxes. Otherwise, we're just choosing between Democrats here. You know, the rhinos have run so wild, people can't even tell the difference between a Democrat and Republican in Ohio. And if we're going to pull up on the plane here, we need to have a clear message that we're going to pass historic tax cuts, we're going to cut government, and at the same time, we're going to give better services. This fear-mongering that you're going to lose your roads, your police, your fire, there'll be no education, that's ridiculous. The people are very reasonably saying, we've been overpaying for years, so we expect twice as much for half the cost. And frankly, that's just a start.
No, you're absolutely correct. I'm going to show you something. I thought this was kind of funny, you guys. So, John, you had this. Let me see if I got the audio for this. I should have the audio. Let's see.
These property taxes are out of control. You said it, big guy. No more taxes! Yeah! These property taxes are out of control. You said it, big guy. No more taxes! Yeah! These property taxes are out of control. You said
it. Okay, they're out of control anyhow.
Well, as you can see, these out of control property taxes are even affecting cryptids like Sasquatch and Bigfoot. You know, the poor guy was taxed out of his home. That's why there's been so many sightings of Bigfoot in Northeast Ohio. You know, he's on a fixed income. He only gets a little bit of royalties from those old History Channel specials and that video of him slowly walking in that blurry image. And bottom line, it wasn't enough to make ends meet, so Sasquatch, Bigfoot,
wait a minute,
whatever you want to call him, got taxed out of his
home. Does he get royalty for any of that, John? Do you know? Does he get any kind of royalty for
but it's
those old movies
Joe.
where
gets so much?
Yeah, where everybody could barely see him and it was just real blurry and stuff. Representative Thomas has been out on the road pushing reforms and telling us we are angry.
Oh, he's right there. We are angry. There's no question about that, Joe. No question about that. We're angry, and we like Representative Thomas.
But Dave Thomas recently said, in response to Senate President Rob McCauley, who's called for actual present tax relief. And Senator McCauley rightly pointed out that the quote-unquote reforms that the state legislature has adopted to date, by and large, just reduce future increases. So you're still going up, you're just not going up quite as fast. And I don't know about your definition of a tax cut, but my definition is your taxes are lower than when they started. So Senator McCauley rightly said people are frustrated because the state legislature keeps bragging about all these quote-unquote reforms, yet taxes are higher than they've ever been. And in response to McCauley calling for actual tax cuts, something that I will give him credit for saying, Dave Thomas said something to the effect of, we're not authorized, we're not permitted to do that, we can't actually cut that. And it makes you wonder who's authorizing Representative Thomas for these quote-unquote reforms. But the bottom line is, Rob McCauley is right. A tax cut means your taxes are lower than when they started. And just cutting future increases is not a tax cut. You're still taking more from the taxpayer.
Commissioner, would you agree with the statement that Matt Huffman is driving the bus, and Finance Chairman Jerry Serino is right behind him in the first seat?
Well, they both made their opinions very clear on the abolition of property taxes, or even cutting property taxes. It's clear that they want the status quo, because the status quo means you pay more and more and more into their coffers, and then they dole the money out to the donor class, and they stand on top of that pyramid scheme. I get it. If all the money's coming to you, why wouldn't you like the system? But if you ask anyone who runs Columbus today, they're going to tell you Speaker Huffman. So I'm not speaking out of turn or giving you any special insight and agreeing with Brian that Matt Huffman runs the show and Dave Thomas and everyone else pretty much do as they're told. And if they don't, they'll be primaried and out pretty quick. But the reality is, even Speaker Huffman can't control we the people, and can't control the fact that polling is bad, that this stance that we're just going to do whatever we want and you're just going to have to keep paying, it's killing Republicans at the polls right now. And the few people who are speaking out are getting a hero's welcome. So I want to give a shout out to Jay Edwards for being the latest statewide official to say let's abolish property taxes. The people who are doing the right thing and are standing up for the folks, they're getting huge boosts in support. The people who are saying, no, we're going to keep the money status quo, they're seeing the bottom fall out of their polling right now. Amy Atkins shouldn't even be competitive.
Yeah, Commissioner, I'd love to, tell people that if you're going to donate to campaigns or you're going to vote for anybody, find out what they're talking about as far as the property tax issue. Do they believe in private property? Are they going to follow their oath of office and follow the Ohio Constitution? Because I'm with the idea that they're not going to reduce property taxes. They're violating Article 1 of the Ohio Constitution. There's no question about it. And I would say just donate to those candidates for whatever position it is, based on what they're going to do with the property taxes.
They're also violating Article 6, Section 2 of the Ohio Constitution, which requires their state legislature to fund public schools. And yet they're pushing that obligation on the local taxpayers. We're double, triple, quadruple paying for public schools. When people say, oh, so you don't want to fund, you don't want to pay for these services? No. Not only do we want to fund essential services, we're paying for them many times over. We're paying the state sales tax, state income tax. We've got the lottery. And then you want property taxes on our home on top of it? How about no?
Exactly. We're being taxed to death on all that. And the state, as I tell people now, as I get a better, clear picture of what it takes with this whole property tax thing. My reasoning is, number one, the state is going to have to take over the schools. They're going to have to fund them. And they're state schools, so the state can fund the schools. And not on the backs of the local taxpayers in any capacity. So not even a local income tax, which would be just shifting the money to a different pile. No, and it'd still be coming out of our paychecks and everything. No. The schools have to be funded by the state. Then the second criteria is there can't be any property tax on your primary residence. I know we're trying to abolish everything, and that's fine, but I can't believe that the legislators wouldn't come up with something like Florida is doing and say, okay, all income-producing property, they can pay a property tax, but man, you've owned your home, you bought the home, it's like any other asset, it's your primary residence, no more property taxes, because this is insane. I read something in Cleveland.com where this guy, this mathematician was saying, well, every dollar that you give to the vouchers, that's a dollar less than the public schools are going to get. And I started thinking about that for a minute. I said, that's not really true. Okay, because his argument was it's just one big pot of money, and if you either give it to the school or give it to the private school or the public school. But if you have, let's say, you have a student who leaves the public school to become go into a private school, they're going to get funding, and as that happens, which it should, you're going to have a decrease in enrollment in the public school. So when you have a decrease in enrollment, then you need fewer teachers, fewer administrators, you need fewer buildings. You don't have to be building these Taj Mahals and everything like that. So that's how this whole scale should be working. But you know darn well it doesn't work that way. Doesn't matter how many kids leave the public school, they still want that same amount of money. As a matter of fact, they want more. They want more money every single frickin' year. And they want to build bigger and bigger schools. And the other thing that aggravated me a lot, too, was with DeWine. You know, he wants to have so that these kids can go in and get eyeglasses, dental work, talk to a psychologist, you know, on and on and on. And what the hell is that all about? It's supposed to be a school. He's just building this big monstrosity of a entity that is controlled by the government.
He's building a socialist utopia. The guys are flaming socialists.
Yeah, he's trying to, but I mean, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. No, the schools, they should have minimum. Why not privatize education? Well, you guys could chime in on this, but I would say, listen, you're talking about privatizing. We already have private. Why don't we just do this? Give everybody a voucher. If you want to go to a private school, take it with you. If you want to go to a public school, take it with you and hand it to them and be done with it.
I would agree with that. I would say that the schools need to compete for the children. Just because you live in a particular school district, I don't think that. And if that school district doesn't have the value system of the family, why should I have to send my child to that school? And so I've been advocating for public schools. They've got to compete for the children, because you ask the basic question: who's responsible for the education of a child? And I've asked that question to several people now, and some of them are hemming and hawing. They're not really sure. And one person said, "Well, the state." I don't view that's the state's role. Governor DeWine, with his idea of providing complete services, that's the Representative Dan Troy has already said that the public school funding is a purest form of socialism from the redistribution of wealth standpoint.
And Brian, nonetheless, Representative Dan Troy supports this socialism in public schools. It's not just that he observes that it is the purest form of socialism. What's so troubling to me as his constituent is that he supports it. He supports it continuing and getting worse and worse. And what disgusts me the most is that these politicians like Dan Troy and the school board members have the unmitigated gall to stand behind our kids, to use them as political props and say, it's for the children. Such a lie. If they gave a damn about our kids, if they gave a damn about the future of Ohio, they would want our children to be able to go to any public school, any private school, homeschool, any educational option, whatever fits them best. They'd say, if it means a better education for you, go for it. But instead, we're trapping kids in failing public schools. We're stealing their future. Also, some bureaucrats, principals, and politicians can get wealthy. It's disgusting. But I think that's the first step in reform. We have to say no to these despicable politicians who are using our kids as political props for their personal gain. Don't you dare put their names in your mouth. Don't you dare say this is for the children. Admit it's for you.
Yeah. Commissioner, I was reading up on there was a House bill where the legislators are trying to address the problem with reading and math, and I happen to agree with the union on this one, in that the union was complaining that what has happened is, although everybody wants to see the proficiency scores increase, the legislators create more and more government. They're into tracking anything and everything that related to improving test scores. And all that does is add administrative cost to the school system. So I would say if you're going to increase the proficiency scores, don't have additional administrative costs to make it happen. We've already spent enough on the administration.
All right, guys.
The unfunded mandates from Columbus are absurd.
I'm going to get our guest on here because we can't keep our guests waiting. Jeff Skinner, the Ohio Register. How you doing, man? The fanfare and everything. Good to see you out there. Good to see you. The Ohio Register. I'm going to that a lot more often now because you got some good stories that you're always putting in there. And we got to cover a couple of them here. I thought we would cover two that were on there. One was about food, or maybe that stuff that they claim is food, and data centers. So we'll talk about those two here if we could. But anyhow, let me just show you this. So this is the Ohio Register. This is, and let me get you on there. I got to get you on here and at least let you say hello. How you doing, man?
Yeah, hey, how's it going? nice to be back. I was enjoying listening to the conversation on property taxes in schools. I'm probably more extreme than most of your panelists there. I'm a fan of giving the tax dollars back to the people and letting us decide if we even want to go to an institution or homeschool. I think homeschoolers often get the short end of the stick when it comes to that. But I won't belabor that conversation.
We agree with that, Jeff. We agree.
Yeah, homeschooling. We forget about that sometimes. You're absolutely right. Homeschooling is very, very important. Some very intelligent people come out of the homeschooling. I think all of them, most of them at least. Okay.
Commissioner Plechnik.
For the record, Joe, I was homeschooled.
Okay. Well, there's an exception to every rule. But anyhow, we'll keep moving on here. All right, Jeff. So let's talk about food. I want you to watch this.
Yeah.
Let me just show you this.
Okay.
Because I got this off X, and I thought it was kind of funny.
This is like extremely thick. Doesn't taste the same. Like, why? Or is this?
This poor lady, she went to Arby's thinking she was getting a roast beef sandwich. She got something she said she's never seen before.
Or new meat? Because if so, you done messed up Arby's. Because that ain't it. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
And to
guys, I don't think chocolate's supposed to look like this. Fake real chocolate, bro. It's like poop, bruh. This is literally like slime, bro. Look, I'm literally peeling it.
All right. So anyhow, I wanted to get that started because I know that the article that you were writing about, and let me get that up here real quick. This is in Texas. There's some kind of a law change, and it could be affecting Ohio as well. And you got to let us know about it. Look at this warning:
Yeah.
This product contains an ingredient that is not recommended for human consumption by the appropriate authority in Australia, Canada, European Union, or the United Kingdom. It's not even recognized as food. But anyhow, fill us in on that stuff there. Go ahead.
So this is actually a really important bill because it could have impacts across the country, even though it is specific to Texas. So it's Texas Senate Bill 25. And what that bill essentially is attempting to do is create a label that you just saw that food manufacturers would have to put on all of their products across the country if it contains specific one of like 40 something ingredients. And these are things like synthetic dyes, blue 1, yellow dye number 5, red 2, preservatives, stabilizers, emulsifiers, other ingredients that they try to package under these sort of natural or artificial flavor headers. And the reason why it would impact the entire country is because even though it would only have jurisdiction in Texas, the food manufacturers don't have the capacity to print individualized labels for just the state of Texas. So products that they create and ship across the continental U.S. would have to have the same packaging across the board. So that which is manufactured for Texas would be shipped all over the U.S., including Ohio. So this is a very important bill because it puts a front-facing label on the package that lets consumers know this is containing a product that is banned in the rest of the Western world.
Wow.
And these are compounds that are actually very hazardous to health. I mean, things like synthetic dyes have been tied to mood dysregulation in children, even exacerbating autism spectrum disorders and Asperger conditions. The reason for that is these synthetic dyes actually interfere with neurotransmitters. They can, alter the levels of dopamine and serotonin, create mood dysregulation. They create neuroinflammation, which we've talked about on this program before in terms of neuroinflammation and its connection to developing autism spectrum disorder. So it's very important that we get these things out of food. But in lieu of that, at this stage, proper labeling, I think, goes a long way in helping warn consumers and parents, hey, what you think is safe to feed your kids actually isn't.
No, that's why I was throwing some of that stuff at the very beginning that, Arby's. I'm not saying you should eat at Arby's, okay? But now they're saying that it doesn't even look like food. They don't even know what the hell it is. And then that kind of Hershey's chocolate. I don't know, that lady was, it was like almost, real flimsy, and you can just wave it around and everything. She's like, what the hell is this? Let me ask you a question on this. And you may not know the answer to this, but how much is this stuff regulated? Like, it looks like, let's say, Hershey's just changed their formula. I mean, who's really keeping tabs? Or when you go and McDonald's says there's 20 grams of fat in a hamburger, I mean, who's really monitoring that? They may have at one time, but how do you know they're not using different oils, different meat, or anything else? Do you have any clue on that, how well stuff is regulated?
To some extent. So a lot of it comes down to the FDA specific, bylaws, which is touched on in the article pertaining to things like Nutrition Labeling and Education Act of 1990 or the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, FDC Act, under Section 403. So like a lot of this stuff comes down to whether or not they can classify compounds as collective class names, which is how they get away with a lot of it. So if you look at a food package label on the back of it, you'll see a lot of things that say, natural flavors added or natural ingredients. That's a class header. And basically they're allowed to include a lot of different things, whether that's pieces of a horse, whether that's, and I'm just going to be honest, aborted fetal tissue lining, which is used for creating flavor enhancers now in fast food products, or anything under the sun, because natural is anything coming from a natural base, form. So that could be human, animal, who knows what. In addition to that, you have the incidental additives, which is under 21 CFR 101.100A3. And this is specific headers that comes from items that are included in the manufacturing of food products, but are not at what they call significant enough levels to impact health or wellness according to FDA regulations or previous FDA regulations, but are still in the food compound at a high enough level that you can test it and find it. These are things like anti-foaming agents that are used in certain like breads and things like that because they use, and sometimes wood pulp derivatives to make the bread rise that should not be in there at all. So we've gotten to the point where we have essentially deregulated the food industry to such an extent they are including things that should never have been discussed or even consumed by humans, but because of the way that we're collectively classing things and allowing it to go under the radar, we're essentially eating things that are rubberized, plasticized, made of wood or wood derivatives, yoga mat derivative things, and bread. Like it's gotten insane.
Yeah, you really don't know what to eat anymore. Now that is a big warning label, and it's on potato chips. You would think of all things, you ought to be able to eat potato chips for crying out loud, but they're making it with ingredients that are harmful to us and could be potentially even knocking us out, killing us, giving us brain damage, the whole works.
Jeff, thank you so much for bringing this to light. It's great information, and I'm going to contact Andy Rose, who's our administrator here in Township. I'm going to see if I can start raising chickens. I'm going to have to raise my own food, it seems like, because I've given up on the fast foods. I have. McDonald's I didn't know about Arby's, but now that I see that about Arby's, I won't be, going to Arby's for sure.
Yeah, or Hershey's chocolate. You got to watch yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
that kind of stuff could do you in. Yeah,
I'm just hoping Marly's here in Mentor doesn't do anything to destroy their chocolate. So I'll have to find out.
No,
it's time to co-op our foods.
Over to the commish. Oh. Wait, there's a voice from beyond I just heard. There he is. You've been hiding. Jonathan. You've been hiding.
I was waiting for my opportunity to chime in.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'm suspicious of collusion between these food manufacturers and hospital systems. If they can keep us sick and unwell, they make more money in the hospitals.
I agree, Jonathan.
You know me. I'm a follow the money guy.
Yeah, that's why I never go for a checkup, because why should I go to a checkup? Are they going to find something wrong? I got to stay away from them.
We've seen this trend towards cheapening our food and our consumables in the United States for a long time. I mean, economies of scale are a wonderful thing, but here's where they create a perverse incentive. If you're a huge company like Pepsi or Frito-Lay, Hershey's, Nestle, the bottom line is you save 1/10 of 1 penny on a good over millions and millions sold. That's real money. And so there's this huge incentive to cut corners. I mean, I remember when Coca-Cola briefly switched from Coke to New Coke and then switched back to the original formula. And what I was told by Pepsi executives who are watching their rival Coke very closely is that it's clear to them the reason that Coke engaged in that whole ill-fated experiment of changing their traditional formula to a new flavor was because they wanted to distract people from the fact that they were switching from cane sugar to high fructose corn syrup. Everyone was so relieved that Coca-Cola went back to its original formula. No one noticed. It was no longer sugar. It was corn syrup in its place. Substantially cheaper, but not as good flavor and not as good for you.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right, guys. I want to also talk about data centers while we have you with us here tonight, Jeff. So I know that there's another article here. We're going to switch gears here. And this is about Finley with their data centers. Finley not proposing data center moratorium at this time. Mayor uses emotional tactics in time card battle. So maybe you can explain a little bit about the data centers. And I also want to piggyback off of this into what is happening in Portsmouth, Ohio. I don't know if you heard about it. They're going to be putting up the largest data center in the world. And that's supposed to be breaking ground next year. So, and you're going to be, flip out when you hear how much electricity that 10 gigawatt data center is going to use. But anyhow, can you fill us in on what happened there in Finley?
Yeah, so I won't belabor the time card thing because that's a more localized issue with the administration. But it's in terms of the moratorium, members of the public have been reaching out to the zoning commission and the city council and the mayor's office requesting a moratorium be put in the city specifically to prohibit the creation of data centers. Now, there's no plan for a data center at this time, and the zoning committee, their response to this request is essentially said that the Finley zoning does not actually permit the creation of data centers at this time. So there's no purpose or point to a moratorium. Now, many residents have looked at that as basically an excuse, right? Because we all know that a change to a zoning rule is far easier to make happen than they make it seem. So, this has created a little bit of a public concern because it seems at this time the city council and the mayor's administration is refusing to even consider a moratorium because they're using that zoning code, absence as a sort of excuse. I would say that at this time, and to jump onto what you're talking about with Portsmouth and that coming data center, I'm aware very much the energy usage. I believe the numbers were about a third of the current energy consumption for the state of Ohio would be going towards this data center. It's It's egregious. And there's more to say about, I think, in my opinion, what data centers are going to be used for, what the ultimate strategy and goal is for creating them, and why there's this huge push. Because ultimately, the arguments that they're using for why we need to have these, they're using job creation. I mean, these things create tens of jobs in every center that they make, and they're trying to bolster this as like, well, we gotta create jobs across the state, and this is going to be a huge Silicon Valley boom. Most of those jobs that come over are already imported from the companies that are managing the data centers. They're bringing people in that are already employed from another state. So we're not actually creating even those 10 jobs that you're going to get in a given data center are not even going to go to 10 Ohioans. They could be imported workers more likely than not. In addition to that, you have the environmental impact. Now, I don't want to take too much time on this, but if your reviewers are not aware, there's been a recent change in the federal EPA regulation in terms of PFAS exposure and what they've permitted in terms of PFAS exposure. They actually increased the amount of PFAS that they believe humans can be exposed to, specifically in water compounds. And this is a problem because what it means is that on your local level, your wastewater treatment that goes into your drinking water no longer has to account for a large quantity of PFAS exposure or limits in the water that they're filtering out. So all these cities that are getting data centers in, the wastewater that they filter out goes into the water treatment supply. This contains cleaning solvents, plasticizers, all kinds of problems, and high levels of PFAS. So now that the federal EPA has sort of cut the cord on regulation for that, there's going to be a huge problem for people's drinking water in municipal areas that rely on sort of that closed loop cycle. That's independent of the fact that the Ohio EPA is currently reviewing a permit, which should have, in my opinion, never even been considered because it violates their entire reason for existence, which states that they're currently debating whether they should allow data centers in rural areas to dump wastewater into the Great Lakes. And this is a problem because the EPA has specific bylaws that says they're not allowed to permit downgrading of the state's water supply. That's part of why they are in existence. And they're arguing that we should permit this because it's necessary for Ohio's economic development. Again, the tens of jobs that you're going to get for every data center coming in, we're risking complete destruction of the state waterways and the drinking water supply in municipal cities for
No, that's a really good point because this big one that's coming in Portsmouth, that's going to be right on the Ohio River. And it seems like that they need water. So they're going to be putting these big data centers near big bodies of water. And you're right, man. They could be polluting that up big time.
Joe, data centers need two things. They need lots of water and lots of electricity. And that's why you're seeing Ohio targeted, because we have a lot of waterways. Lake County has been the interest of several sites. We're right off Lake Erie. We have the Perry Nuclear Power Plant. And there's been an ongoing civil war in Perry between the village, which wants to bring in a data center to increase their tax base, and basically the township school board and the populace in general that have been very strongly opposed to it. Our Lake County Sheriff, Frank Bruno, for example, lives in Perry, and the proposed data center would be right next to his house. So he's pushed back very hard on that idea. But you can see why the interest is there. You've got the body of water. You've got the Perry Nuclear Power Plant. This fight is going to continue in Lake County. There's also been talks of a data center. Mayor John Barr has warned about this right over by the old coal plant. Now it operates as just essentially a relay station for power. No longer generates in Eastlake. So right by Eastlake Timberlake, there's been apparently some interest. And so this is something Lake County's been dealing with. This is something Ohio's dealing with. And it's because we've got electricity and we've got water. So they're coming for it.
Yeah, we got flat land too. And we have lots of tax incentives that they can't pass up, like free property taxes for these monstrosities. And they don't have to pay any sales tax on any of the construction materials they buy. Let me just tell you how big this place is. This data center is a 10 gigawatt All right. I think the largest right now is being built in Louisiana is like 2 gigawatts. Okay. So this is going to be 10. It's going to be like 5 times that size. This thing is enormous, is absolutely enormous. It's going to use 80 terawatts of electricity. So how much is 80 terawatts of electricity per year? It's equivalent to 8.3 million homes that they would use in the course of a year. That's how much electricity this thing's going to be drawing. This just the one data center. And the entire Ohio consumption's about 150 terawatts. So if this consumes 80,
more than half of it.
It's more than
a
half.
Yeah.
It's more than half of Ohio.
And I wonder if the smart meters that we're hearing about, this is just a precursor to what they're going to do. So they put the smart meters in, which can control the amount of electricity going into the home. You bring in these data centers, and they're following the water, and they're using up all the electricity. And just like in Colorado, I understand that they have brownouts where they can actually cut the electricity to the homes. I think this is what's going to be on the horizon, for the state of Ohio. They're setting it up already.
Yep.
I think Brian's absolutely right. We're going to see controlled brownouts in Ohio. These smart meters are the facilitative device. They're going to get them in under the guise that they're just there to have more accurate bills, that they might actually help you to save electricity in the long run. But in reality, they're really there so they can turn off the spigot. And when that data center needs all the energy, when the demands are up over the summer and people are trying to turn on their air conditioners, they're just going to switch you right off and let that data center keep on going, because the data center is the valuable client. They'll have you do without.
Yeah, without a doubt. Hey, Jeff, I want to ask you a question, because you were kind of alluding to something, that you have a theory about these data centers. What's that theory?
Yeah, I mean, it's piggybacking on what Brian was touching on. I think energy consumption and throttling is one aspect of it. But we already know over the last 10 years, the goal has always been to, create a technocratic control structure. And it's not just energy consumption, it's mass surveillance. The next generation 911 programs that are all going to be running through AI protocols, going through information from flock cameras and targeting systems that are used to identify perpetrators, et cetera, across county and state lines. All of that feeds into a grid at some point, and it started way back in the early 2000s with a DARPA project called LifeLog and the Information Awareness Project. And those were started at the input of the War on Terror in the early 2000s. And essentially what these things was to use quantum computing and advanced computational theory to evaluate threats in the citizenry before they occurred. They want to be able to essentially look at whether or not you're going to be likely to commit a crime against the state or the system itself and cut that off at the pass. Now, LifeLog eventually ceased to be a program under DARPA's Black Box or Black Book program, and that corresponded with the onset and the release of Facebook. And the Information Awareness Project has expanded now in a similar fashion. It was overseen by a guy named John Poindexter, who was very famously one of the two people, who got consequences or charges after Iran-Contra. And he took this project over and expanded it. And that's where we're at today. I mean, ultimately, we're not making these data centers so that people can make AI videos of cats playing pianos. That's not what it's about. It's about creating a surveillance structure that will keep people in their homes if need be, with mass surveillance, control over your energy usage. And if they want to, eventually, the goal will be some form of digitalized currency. And all of that will be kept on a blockchain and surveilled with your biometric data. So they need all of this infrastructure to facilitate that. And that's why I think it's paramount that we fight these things, because if we don't get them out, I mean, this is essentially they're erecting the digital fences around us for what will become a digital prison for us.
Unbelievable. This is the reason AI was created right here.
No more taxes! Yeah! These property taxes are out of control. You said it, big guy. No more taxes! Yeah! These property taxes are out of control.
That's the
You
whole
said it, big
purpose
guy.
of AI right there. That's why we're spending all these billions and billions of dollars so we can create those types of memes. And Bigfoot too. By the way, Bigfoot's been spotted everywhere. He's been out and about like crazy, so it's pretty interesting.
Hey,
Joe,
I've got a.
You know, Plechnik has got at least an inch or two on Bigfoot, I think, from that video.
Yeah, John's a pretty big guy. I didn't realize
him.
he was the same size as Bigfoot, though. Yeah, go ahead,
I feel
Brian.
really bad for Bigfoot. He was recently taxed out of his home. That's why there are so many sightings in Northeast Ohio. You know, he's on a fixed income. He only gets so many royalties from that fuzzy video of him walking through the forest and those old History Channel specials. So he just couldn't afford when they revalued his property. He's homeless. He's out in the woods now, just trying to make do. But in all seriousness, when even Bigfoot can't afford property taxes, you know somebody's got to pull the plug.
The only thing I want is somebody to please use 4K if they're going to get a picture of Bigfoot, okay? Some kind of video with 4K, okay? So we can zoom in and stuff. None of this shaking the camera like crazy. That's enough of that.
Yeah, I was wondering from the group, with the facial recognition, software that seems to be very prevalent, and I'm very concerned that United States is going to look like Europe, where you got cameras on seemingly every corner. Is it possible that we're going to have to wear these masks so that we don't look like ourselves as we go out in public and we can get our freedom? Or is that going to be outlawed in the state of Ohio too? I'm just worried about our freedom and liberty, down the road with all of these cameras that are going to. It's really just doing exactly what they're doing in Europe right now. That's foreshadowing what's going to happen here.
It's being built even out where I live.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
Taking pictures of everything and video.
Yeah, you got it. I'm going to. I'm going to say, we're going to say adios, Jeff. Thanks again for coming on. Appreciate it. We got to have you on again real soon. Thanks for all you're doing with the Ohio Register. We appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Jeff.
Great job.
Great work, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, we got our next guest coming up here in just a minute. But first, Ken, are you still with us?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, give us a good plug. Make it a good one.
Yeah, just make sure to, on any platform that you're watching, to also share, not just follow us, but to share. Also, of course, if you are on YouTube, please support us over there. You can do that with memberships or with a super chat. So if anyone's over there, please be one of the first super chats for us. That would be great. You can also do a Rumble rant over on Rumble. You can also do stars on Facebook. And you can also, we're going to be really working on the 24/7. We've had the 24/7 going for Rumble. You can watch our old videos, our old podcasts, basically 24/7. So if you missed it, you can go over to Rumble and watch it. We'll be adding that to our website. So just go to ohiopoliticalnews.com and you can watch it right on the main page. Also, go to ohiopoliticalnews.com/shop to get the mugs, to get the merch, anything that you would like. I know we have a couple of people going out to get some more footage. I know Hillary Jackson's going to be doing some work with us, and that's great. So we'll hopefully get some of that footage back as soon as she's able to do that. But yeah, this does cost money to do this. We're trying to build this. We are growing. Numbers are going up, and that's great on all platforms. And if you want to also do an event, you have something going on, go and email Joe at ohiopoliticalnews.com. Let us know what is going on, and we will go out and live stream it. We have the capability of live streaming it. Please let us know if there is something going on in your community that we want to cover for Ohio. Please let us know. The only way you can do that is emailing us or even going into Facebook. I've been getting a lot of messages over there, and we appreciate that. We need the support, and then also 24/7 is growing. If you want to be a sponsor, please be a sponsor of the podcast Sunday nights or the weekly podcasts that Joe can do, or the 24/7 getting your word out. We can definitely do that too. So just reach us over on either Kent at ohiopoliticalnews.com or Joe at ohiopoliticalnews.com. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, did anybody do a Rumble, or not a Rumble chant, on YouTube? Did anybody take us up on the offer?
Not yet. I'm challenging everybody out there, whoever can do. If you do the first Rumble rant, I will give you, if you can send out your address, I will give you a mug. I will send
and the
you
mug's
a mug.
probably
Whoever
more than
wants
the Rumble
to
rant. Yeah. So we're actually going to lose money on it, but we'll do
let's
it. We
see
don't
the
care.
Rumble. Let's see it work. Whoever comes, whatever you want to do, it would be nice if you could do, at least cover the charge, but if you can at least do whatever, we would appreciate that. Thanks.
All right, we appreciate it much. Thanks, Ken. All right, we got our next guest on here tonight, Marly Hornik from RealAmerica.vote. How are you tonight, Marly? Good to see you.
Great. How are you guys, gentlemen? Good to see you again, too.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm glad to see you again. And it's funny because I was doing a little bit of research with Grok, which is ChatGPT, except it's the one that Elon has. Anyhow, it's an AI. And they mentioned that you were on the Ohio Political News podcast. I was like, wow! It's like that was really neat to see.
We're famous now,
You
thanks to
got to be
Marly
kidding
Hornik.
me. Okay, very good. Let me just give a little bit of info, and then you can also fill in the dots a little bit here. But you're the founder, CEO of RealAmerica.vote. Your mission is to build a foundation for lasting election validity where compliance and verification are required. We like those words. Accurate voter rolls. We like that. Constitutional compliance. Federal oversight of voter data and protections against voter roll corruption, election interference, digital insurrection. Some of this stuff I don't even know what it is. But it sounds really, really good. Citizen-led voter roll audits, and also you do litigation. And you have been involved in Ohio politics because in 2024 you had a federal lawsuit in Akron challenging the Ohio voter rolls, and I think that's why we had you on last time. Because of that.
I'm sure.
Of that. Yeah, because we're out of Ohio here, and I know you're in New York. It's good to have you. Is there anything you want to add to that?
That's what Grok said about me?
That's what Grok said. Yeah.
All right. Well, I would say that the real value that I add to the gigantic election integrity / election validity debate nationally is the research that I've done on how to thread the needle of using the Constitution to fix our problems now. And so I think that would be something. That's probably the only thing I would add, plus black belt.
Okay, what I want to do is I want to play something here, and this, I got this right. Well, let me play this right here. This one's pretty good, too. Let me just play this and get your thoughts on this. 1 second here.
She was put back on the rolls, and I verified with that clerk. Can you see if she's active or inactive? And she checked, and that deceased family member was marked active.
Okay, so she had a dead family member taken off the rolls 20 years after this person died and then put back on the rolls, meaning somebody was voting under the name of her dead family member, and she's the Speaker of the House in Michigan. So how big a problem, how widespread do you think this really is?
The review so far this last year of approximately between 50 and 60 million voter records, which states have voluntarily uploaded or we've gotten from them, has shown hundreds of thousands, over 300,000 dead people on the voter rolls, and that's just a slice of the voter rolls.
Okay. So that was something that I just saw on X the other day. I mean, that was just something brand new, because what that is the states that submitted their voter rolls to the Department of Justice, they analyzed it. Now, of course, there's like 20 states that refused to give them anything. So these were the good states, and they got over 300,000 dead people on those voter rolls. You can imagine what it would be in California and New York, and Georgia's really bad, Michigan, et cetera, et cetera. So is that something along the lines there? Is that something that you are concerned with voter integrity?
Yeah, and we don't have to imagine what the problems are like in California, New York, Georgia, and Michigan, because we've audited them. So, for example, in New York, I don't have a count on dead people, but as Harmeet just said, that's only one slice of the voter rolls. It's only one of the myriad problems that we discover if you take even the most cursory look at accuracy in voter registration records. Now, there's a real anchor in this inside of the United States Constitution. So a lot of the issues with the voter rolls are adjudicated under several federal laws that are hopelessly inadequate for rectifying them. And those are the Help America Vote Act and the National Voter Registration Act, which basically assume that registration records, once entered into the statewide voter roll databases, which is a federal document, they assume that once they're entered in, they must have been valid. The voter must have been validated. They must have been, verified in their identity and in their qualifications, their voter qualifications. But the reality is, in the New York State voter rolls alone, we are nearing 6 million registration records that fail to meet the qualification standards of New York State law. These are registrants who were registered to vote before they were born, registered to vote on dates that haven't happened yet, registered to vote on Christmas, Thanksgiving, January 1st, born in 1860 on January 1st. Their registration records are backdated in the rolls. So this is really like a Doge-style operation that we've been running at RealAmerica.vote, previously at New York Citizens Audit, and obviously we've trained many other states also to do this work. So, we did that so that we could come up with a single cohesive argument instead of trying to fixate on, the machines in Antrim versus the cardboard that went up in Fulton County. Kind of like there's no thread here that Americans can hang their hats on that unifies the problems and shows that it's a national issue. So the voter rolls in New York and California are a disaster, an administrative disaster. And we do have a federal lawsuit in New York State right now in the Northern District about these issues.
Is there anything I guess the most frustrating thing, let me show you one more thing. I'm going to go around the horn here, get other people to, but this came off of X, and this was from 2020. I mean, it just came off of X, but they're going back to 2020 and looking at all the problems we had. And let me just show you this here. I think I have some of the audio. I should. Watch again. Let's see.
There are instances where in the middle of the night, tens of thousands of ballots were appearing in states like Michigan, where Joe Biden was getting a higher percentage of the vote than Bashar al-Assad and Kim Jong-il in their election.
Numerous whistleblowers are coming forward with credible information that hundreds of thousands of votes for President Trump mysteriously disappeared
Just
on election
mysteriously
night.
disappeared
On Tuesday, Jesse
on
Morgan,
election
a worker
night.
for
Nothing to
Thomas
see here.
More Society irregularities. Backing up President Trump's warnings, Klein explains that the post office was rife with fraud and that many Postal Service workers were taking part in widespread illegal efforts to undermine the election. While the missing truck full of ballots is bad enough, other whistleblowers say they drove thousands of pre-filled ballots right over state lines, which is a federal crime.
So anyhow, it goes on, but there's so much fraud out there. Do you see, so many questions, but okay. Do you see anybody being held accountable for this? I mean, I've heard again and again and again and again, and it's nonstop about all the fraud, but it's like, okay, I know it's out there. It's so obvious. So what are we going to do about it? I guess that's the frustrating part.
Right. And I totally share that concern and frustration. And that is one of the reasons why in 2024 I was head of an organization that filed 9 federal lawsuits, 1 in Ohio and 1 in 8 other states. Those lawsuits have now culminated in an opportunity in the state of Colorado to make an argument that the Fifth Circuit upheld in Texas regarding materiality. And this is really the anchor. This is the anchor, the legal anchor in our lawsuit in New York. And this is where we have this opportunity, because all the things that those videos show and talk about are things that citizens are not able to prove. We have to wait for law enforcement and prosecutors to do something about it. And sometimes it feels like we're going to wait so long, we're going to be the dead voters voting, right? So the point that I wanted to make before, and let's just go ahead and hone in on it now, is that in the United States Constitution, and it just happens to be the second sentence, Joe, like if you are sitting in front of a piece of parchment and you're holding a quill pen, like you're not at a Microsoft, app station, you have a quill pen, your candle has lit your work area, and you are deciding what sentence are you going to put first and what sentence are you going to put second in this document. The second sentence says the people of the several states choose the representatives in Congress. The first sentence says the Congress members are the ones who set the laws. The second sentence says it's us who choose them. And then here's this really great part. It says the states choose the qualifications of those voters by statute. Okay, so here's the deal. When New York State, as an example, again, because our lawsuit currently, the federal lawsuit that I'm currently working over and managing is in the state of New York right now. When New York State fails to meet their own legal standard 6 million times, those are not 6 million clerical errors. Those are 6 million violations of a promise that they made. And it was a condition of ratification. If the states had not agreed that they were going to restrict voter registration and voting to those qualified by state law, we would never have signed the document. We would never have ratified in our conventions. We would have been like, hey, we're better off on our own farms with our own firearms, and you guys get the heck out of here.
Well,
Because
it might be coming back to that soon.
How can we control our representatives without a legitimate electoral process?
Might be coming back to that.
This is the basis of our lawsuit in New York, and this is our opportunity.
All right. I'm going to go around the horn here and see what you guys have to say.
Yeah, in Lake County, I remember speaking to our Board of Elections director. His name is Dante Lewis, and I said, well, when people register to vote, do they have to show that they're citizens? He said, no, it's not a requirement. I said, well, that's going to be a problem. So that's I guess why Trump is trying to put forth the act that he's putting forth. But when I listen to any problems with the database, it tells me we have to have the right people in the Secretary of State's office. And I'm asking everybody, let's really consider Marcel Strivich. He's running for Secretary of State, and he has spent several years looking into this. And we need new leadership in the state of Ohio. Marcel Strivich can do it for the Secretary of State.
Very good. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, so welcome back, Marly Hornik. I have a couple of comments and a few questions. So I became aware of Marly Hornik originally when she was doing work for New York Citizens Audit. And then I'll tell you what, I was just about doing a jig when she expanded her team and started taking a look at other states, including Ohio. And it was ultimately found, and there's a spreadsheet. It's a little dated now. It's a couple of years old, but still roughly comparable to today, where approximately 1.3 million bad or questionable entries were found in Ohio's voter roll database. And the funny thing that happened, actually not so funny, the terrifying thing that happened is that Marly Hornik's team actually prepared and launched a lawsuit against Ohio relating to that. And a connected piece of that is just in a harebrained notion. Ohio does not require those people with bad or questionable entries in the voter roll to vote provisional. More on that in a moment. They get regular ballots, just like all of us regular verified, actual living certified voters. They get the same ballots that we do, which is preposterous. But then what ended up happening in a display of blowing smoke, as soon as the lawsuit dropped in Ohio from Marly Hornik and her team, Secretary of State Frank LaRose. I'm jumping the gun. I almost said Marcel Sturbich because I'm dreaming of a day when we can call Marcel Sturbich our Secretary of State. At the time, Frank LaRose actually came out and did this big press tour talking about how Ohio is this gold standard, et cetera, yada, 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 blowing smoke right at the same time the lawsuit was dropping, and then came out with this. I don't know, he found like 700 bad entries in the voter rolls. And he was like, look at us, we're cleaning up the voter rolls. Well, I did the math on it. It would take a little over 7,000 years for Ohio to actually correct and validate at that rate, at 700 per year. So anyway, Marly, welcome back onto the show. I don't know if I recall those facts, but starting, because this is Ohio political news, what do you recall of that sequence of events, and am I pretty close to accurate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say you're extraordinarily close to accurate. I think it was 1.3 or 1.6 million registration records that failed to meet the state's legal qualification standards. And I think LaRose's response to that was, wow, we just don't have enough money in our satellite offices to deal with these issues. It's all human error. So what was his response? He just immediately took his entire statewide staff and threw you under the bus wherever you are, blamed you for the insecurity and inaccuracy in Ohio elections. There's also a huge problem in Ohio elections because the certification of Ohio elections takes place 6 to 8 weeks before the records are updated with voter history. So basically you have a 6 to 8 week period after certification to cook the books. And, I'm not here to pick on Ohio per se. I would say that Marcel is a great man. I admire him tremendously. I know he's very committed to election validity. And if I lived in Ohio, I would support him. But in terms of the problems that we found nationwide, Ohio is not unique in this. And that, again, is where we have a constitutional opportunity. That lawsuit sadly failed because the attorneys who were overseeing that lawsuit chose, and again, this is kind of like Trump's tariffs, right? Remember, the Supreme Court came out and said, they didn't say your tariffs are illegal, Mr. President. They said you chose the wrong statute. And this was the same thing that happened with that lawsuit. The court never said, hey, that, your findings are totally inaccurate and you have no point and no basis for concern. They said, you can't use mandamus to do this argument. And that was it. So there was no repair yet, but I think, John, you make a really good point, which was obviously LaRose took it very seriously. I remember I was on Bob Frantz, and the next day he was on Bob Frantz, to basically cover up from everything I had pointed out about the failure, his failure as Secretary of State to do the job that the Ohio people paid him for. And, same issue in New York. But the fact that the states are not qualifying voters according to state law should make everyone feel like, wow, here is a piece of constitutional turf. In fact, it's the only place in the entire United States Constitution where we, the people, have an active role. If you think about it, the entire Bill of Rights is passive. It tells us what we are allowed to do. Here is the right you have. And of course, the framers didn't look at it that way, but that's the way modern people read it. The only place where we actually have a job is choosing Congress. Once we choose Congress, we are left to our political factions and our lobbying efforts and all the other things that we do in our communities to take care of each other and to try to leverage political influence. So the choosing of Congress is the critical moment that sets the entire United States government into motion, and obviously the president as well. And I'm talking about the federal government here because this is where we have an action at law, a 1983 civil rights protective action to say, when you, Frank LaRose, or in the case of the lawsuit that I have now, when you, New York State Board of Elections, failed to qualify 900,000 people that you allowed to vote in a federal election, you usurped the right to choose from the people. You tried to grab our constitutional territory and take it for yourself, and you're not allowed to do that. So this is a place where we have to dig our heels in as Americans. You know, I get it, all the stuff on X, and it is maddening. This is the place where we actually have a power and a right to enforce it. And that's what this lawsuit seeks to do. Also, you know, I think Joe was talking about the issues where the DOJ is not getting the voter roll list that they're seeking from over 29 states now that they are suing in federal court. RealAmerica.vote also filed amicus briefs in 2 of those cases, including Pennsylvania, where the Department of Justice has made a certain argument, but we go further and we say, hey, you know what? This document that they're asking for, it belongs to them. And it belongs to them because of James Madison and because of Alexander Hamilton. And we go back into the Federalist Papers and the ratification debates and explain to the court and to both parties that we have this thing called the Guarantee Clause. We are guaranteed a Republican form of government, and the federal government and the state government are required to oversee our constitutional right to choose representatives. They both have a power and an authority to make sure that the other one is doing the right thing. And hopefully that's going to move these cases along a little bit so that the DOJ can do more of the work we saw Harmeet talking about. You know, unfortunately, although a lot of citizens have done great work, of course, the DOJ doesn't feel like that work is trustworthy until they've done it themselves for whatever reason. So we have to wait another couple of years. That's what I'm saying. Like, we could be dead. Like John was saying, it's going to take them, what did you say, 7 million years or something, 7,000 years to clean up Ohio's voter rolls?
Yeah,
right. And by then, you know, there'll be more problems. So we've got to take care of the issues.
I got a feeling 7,000 years from now, I ain't going to be around, okay?
You'll still be voting, though, Joe.
I'm going to tell you one thing. If I do vote after I die, I am not voting Democrat. And it seems like they all vote Democrats for some reason. You know, it's like...
Yeah, all the dead people seem to vote Democrat.
Yeah. So in the afterlife, I don't know what goes on in the afterlife, but it seems you have to vote Democrat or something like that in the afterlife.
Let me just interject something really quickly, if I might. So recently, I've had a series of interactions with government agencies, and it seems like they're all switching over to this E-Verify thing, which is a nightmare. It's a giant, colossal pain in the neck. If you haven't experienced it yet, you should dive in when you've got 72 hours of sheer boredom and a bureaucratic nightmare to grapple with just for the experience of it. You have to go through all these steps to verify that you are who you say you are. And then you get a text message, and from the text message, then you have to generate an email, and then you can use like biometric data and all that stuff. And so that's like the big growing trend in government is like this E-Verify thing. Are you really who you say you are? And it just mind-bogglingly, it is exactly the opposite of what's happening in the voter realm. The voter realm's like, hey, there's a sheet of paper. It showed up from we don't know where. Let's attach it to we'll assume that somebody wants to vote somehow. We don't need to verify anything. We don't need to back anything up. No records need to be maintained. We don't need, the sort of paper trail. It's mind-boggling to me. And I think that a very large number of people, Americans, have woken up to this and want things like they're pushing for the SAVE Act, for heaven's sakes, for a reason, because we're realizing that there are significant places, some are worse than others. If you look at what we're seeing coming out of Fulton County, Georgia, Maricopa County, Arizona, and many other places like it, the news and information that's coming out of Michigan and New York, for heaven's sakes, Marly Hornik and her team are exposing this stuff. Please, here's what I'm going to turn this into. I'm going to implore our audience and anybody that hears this, do not think that, oh, that's just those people over there. We went through a long period of time where we would point at California and say, well, at least we're not as bad as California. But now all of that nasty stuff that was tried out and worked to the detriment of Californians is sweeping the nation. It's rampant in New York and Michigan. It is definitely present in Ohio. So please don't be one of those people that thinks, oh, well, that's everybody else except me. I hear it a lot. It is not the answer. The answer is roll up your sleeves and start asking questions locally where you live about what might be broken in your current election systems. And look at that website. Go to RealAmerica.vote and start following the information. Find Marly Hornik. There's a little side note. I've got sort of an open inside joke with Marly Hornik. I've seen her speak publicly a few times, and I liken her to Sarah Connor from the Terminator movies. That's my nickname for her. Like, I try not to use cuss words, but there's that period of time after she was like Disco Girl and turned into the badass version of Sarah Connor. That's Marly Hornik, and she's out there. She is fighting the fight. You need to find her, find the things that she's doing, and assume that some number of the things that are problem issues are local, and roll up your sleeves and get involved.
You know, John, I want to just cut in because I want to add a couple of items to what you just said. First of all, Ohio is definitely going to be subjected to a lot of the issues if we don't do something, which was part of why I filed that lawsuit in 2024. And if you remember, the election where you guys supposedly voted to amend your state constitution to allow, I think, full term or partial birth abortion. This is what I'm recollecting, and I don't remember what year that was, if it was 2023, I think so. 1/3 of the voters who voted in that election in your major cities were registered to vote on January 1st. So 2/3 of the voters were registered to vote on all other dates, and 1/3 of them were registered to vote on January 1st. And that is bone chilling to me.
Good heavens.
Yeah. It's not a coincidence, and it's not okay. This is an attack on our country. It's an attack on our sovereignty. And I do want to highlight also that I know what you're saying, like, I have this lawsuit in New York. What does that have to do with Ohio? Actually, this is a case of first impressions. There's not been a lawsuit in the United States of America that has focused on a conspiracy against rights that seeks to enforce the second sentence of the United States Constitution. It's always the Voting Rights Act, HAVA, or NVRA. No one has gone after this. It's been used for prosecutions by the DOJ, but it's never been used by citizens before. And this is a very important argument. We're actually waiting right now. It's March 22nd. So we are going to be hearing back any day from the judge in this case about the state's motion to dismiss and whether she's going to dismiss a case or allow it to proceed. My attorney and I are quite convinced that she's not going to be able to dismiss this one. And, you know, that's a detailed argument why we think that, but this is a huge deal.
Marly, what's the court and who's the judge on this case?
It's in the Northern District of New York. The judge is May D'Agostino. And
Okay,
apparently she's supposed to be a very moderate Democrat, a fair-minded and very constitutionally minded judge. Also the, oh gosh, now I can't think of the word. The guy who assists her, and I can't think of the word, it's just blanking out of my head, is supposed to be extremely fair. Yeah, the magistrate is very fair-minded. So the interesting thing was also, you know, here's a point. Okay, so in our lawsuit, because going back in time, one of the things that happened to New York Citizens Audit was we got really big and we got really effective, and that was not popular in New York State government. And so one of the things the State Board of Elections did was send letters defaming our efforts to all of our representatives across the state, to the Association of Counties, the Association of DAs, the Association of Sheriffs. You know, why did they want to tell the law enforcement that we were in the wrong? I don't know. But they did this. And then the attorney general got involved. You might know of her, Letitia James. She ended up opening a criminal pretextual investigation into New York Citizens Audit under the guise of the Ku Klux Klan Act. And we found out we were under this investigation by reading it on the front cover of the Times Union and Newsday, and all of the major, rag newspapers from Montauk to Buffalo. So the first issue in our case is that they not only denied us the right to free speech, they denied us the right to petition, and they interfered with our representative relationships by defaming us before we could get to our representatives. Then in the course of doing that, they denied us the right to vote because we were bringing serious legal issues with their own official records to those representatives. So we couldn't, not only could we not get an audience with our representatives, but we couldn't get our voting rights adjudicated. So now this is the kicker, what did the attorney now inside of the Attorney General's office, representing the Attorney General James and also the State Board of Elections against New York Citizens Audit, what did they say in their motion to dismiss? I'll tell you the last two words of their document. Ignore them. The citizens of New York paid this creep to tell a federal judge to ignore the citizens of New York bringing a matter into court regarding their own representation. It's disgusting.
Yep.
Yeah, that's bad. And I was not aware that when you were talking about Ohio, they're also about you said 1/3 of the voters had the registration date January 1st or something like that. That needs to be looked into. But the thing is, nobody wants to look into that. If you're the Secretary of State, the last thing you want is anybody looking into your voter rolls, especially when you're saying you have the gold standard and all that. So that was some of the problems.
Especially if your last name is LaRose or Sprague.
Hey, I want to switch gears here if I can for a minute, and can we talk about Tina Peters? Is that okay? Because you have information about her, and it was kind of fascinating. I wasn't real up on Tina Peters. I had heard the name flashed here and there, but then on your website, I noticed that you delved into it and pretty extensively. So let me give a little background on Tina Peters, and then if you can fill in the gaps on that. Okay, so here's what I know. Well, first of all, she was sentenced to 9 years in prison. So here's the background of all this, and it has to do with election integrity. So she was collecting in 2021 forensic images of the Dominion voting systems hard drives. And before and after this mandatory software update. Okay, so she's out in Colorado. It's 2021. Basically, what she wanted to do is she was very convinced that there was going to be fraud. There was fraud and everything going on in Colorado. So she wanted to download the database before they did this system upgrade, which would pretty much erase everything there and put in new data. So she's
an elected official at the time. That's important to know.
Yeah, she's right, exactly. She was an elected. She was a fairly high. Well, what elected official was she? I know that she worked for the Board of Elections, but what?
She was the county clerk for Mesa County, Colorado.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyhow, what took place was she. I'm just going to summarize real fast. You can fill in any details you want. But basically, there was a guy that she gave a badge to that gave him access to get into the Dominion voting machines. And she had to turn off the security cameras. And he did a download of the information. And then a couple days later, the other IT guys came in to do the software upgrade. And then when that was completed, this person that she claimed was somebody else. She gave a fake ID to this person so that they could get in there. They then downloaded the new update. And then she had the two files then that she could compare to see what kind of fraud and everything was going on. So that's what she did. And then she passed the information on to Mike Lindell and some other activists for them to look at it. And of course, she got caught, I think primarily because they were giving this information out over social media, so it raised a lot of eyebrows and stuff. Of course, what she did was illegal. They had to get rid of those Dominion machines and get new ones and stuff like that. I think it cost $1 million or something like that. And since and she was sentenced to 9 years. And as Brian had said earlier on, hey, why doesn't Trump pardon her? But these are state crimes, so they're not federal crimes. So Trump cannot pardon her, although I think he would, in a heartbeat. So basically what had happened is the data was copied before and after the upgrade, and then it was given to Lindell. Then he took it to a symposium and did things with it, and some other activists put it out on social media and blah, blah, blah.
Is that from Grok?
That is from Grok.
Okay.
So you
Can I
tell
set
me,
the record straight
yeah,
here?
you set that's
got some inaccuracies.
exactly why we have you here, because I don't trust Grok anymore. But yeah, go ahead, set us straight on what actually happened.
Right. Well, Grok isn't exactly lying to you, but all Grok can do is aggregate information and take the average of it, right? So that doesn't mean that Grok is correct. It just means that Grok is trying to be as, what's the word? Like as normal as possible, right? I'm just reporting the news. I'm just Grok here. So no, there's so many fallacies in that story, unfortunately. So first of all, Tina Peters was the clerk of Mesa County, Colorado. So her responsibility in Colorado as a county clerk was to administer elections. That's one of her jobs. Now, when she is operating in that position, if she's administering an election that is exclusively dealing with Colorado representatives, meaning in state, right? So they're local officials, dog catchers and whatnot, state senators. She's a state official. If there is a federal candidate on that ballot, she is a state official and an officer of Congress. Not my words. That's the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court. She's an officer of Congress. Because of this issue I raised earlier, where James Madison said, hey, and this was a feature, not a bug of the United States Constitution, that we as citizens, we divide our authority that we grant. We don't just give our power over to the federal government, and we don't just give our power over to a state government, because if we only gave our power to one government and that government went rogue, where would we go for help? So we have dual government, actually. We have two different governments, and at the same time that they try to work together and collaborate, they're also constantly butting heads. And that's an advantage on our part. And then if the state government goes rogue, we can go to the federal government and say, hey, this state government is out of control. And, how's that going right now? All right, well, let's shelve that discussion and come back. Because the issue is Tina Peters, she had a responsibility to the federal government because the election in question was a federal election. It was the 2020 election. There is a federal law that mandates she must maintain that data for a 22-month period. Not the whole state's data, but the Mesa County data. That's her job, or one of her jobs. So lo and behold, the state comes in and they say, hey, we're going to wipe your servers. We're going to rebuild everything. It's called a trusted build. We're going to trusted build Colorado. And she had her doubts about this trusted build. And that it doesn't necessarily mean that she thought there was election fraud. I mean, when you update your phone, sometimes some of your apps go haywire, right? That's just part of IT. We all know that it doesn't always go as planned. So she did her duty as a federal officer, an officer of Congress, and she took an image of that server. Now, she tried to take an image of the server the right way. She asked for the opportunity to do that, and the state said no. Jenna Griswold, the Colorado Secretary of State, said, no, we're just going to come in and we're just going to do this trusted build. You can trust it because it's a trusted build, not an untrusted build, right? I mean, it's just a bunch of nonsense. It's just like waving wands around. So Tina had to, in this circumstance, in order to fulfill her duty as a Congress officer of Congress, she had this guy come in. Now, should she have gone to the federal government and said, hey, we have a problem here. You know, they're coming in to do this wipe and I don't know what's going to happen and I need your help. She probably should have done that. And I agree with Joe that this is the point where her conduct did appear to break a law, but she was attempting to uphold a law by breaking a law. So it's very fraught. So she brings somebody in to take an image of the server before it gets potentially wiped. Then the state comes in and they did wipe the server. And now she goes and she gets another image because you know why? It's her duty to know what's in that server. It's the Mesa County server and she's the Mesa County clerk. And if there is something in there that is improper, she can't certify the elections for Mesa County and be an honest person, right? If there's some kind of fraud or misconduct inside of that process, how can she then sign off on it? She has to know what's in there. So this is the issue. And you know, yeah, on RealAmerica.vote, there's a great letter that I wrote. I was sitting in DC in a meeting. There was a bunch of people at that meeting, and some of them were high-level DOJ officials, and they included Mac Warner and Ed Martin. And we were talking about this issue of dual authority and this responsibility under federal law as officers of Congress. And they looked at me and they were like, hey, can you write a letter for Tina Peters and send it? Because they were at their wits' end trying to help this woman. Because as Joe said, there's this narrative that says, well, these were state crimes, so there's nothing the federal government can do. Couldn't be farther from the truth. And in fact, you want to know who committed a federal crime? That was Jenna Griswold when she wiped those servers. Okay, yep. So moving back, I wrote this letter, and you can read it on RealAmerica.vote. It's a great letter for a couple of reasons. First of all, because it helps people to understand better how the framers designed our election systems. And it helps people better to understand how we're going to enforce that original design, which still exists and still is inside of our constitutional framework. We never changed that agreement. It's just that the states stopped following it. So they have to be held accountable for that one way or the other. They either have to comply or they have to get prosecuted. But the letter to Tina was very impactful. In fact, her attorneys turned around and wrote a brief based on the argument within weeks. And they ended up having a hearing about it because it was a very compelling argument. And I'm sorry to say, and you know, I think John Case is a wonderful attorney. I have spoken to him on the phone. I'm sure he's doing his very best to represent Tina. He did back down a little bit when the judge pushed. The judge said, all right, she had a duty to preserve the records, but did she have a duty to investigate? And I guess in that moment, he didn't really think through the reality, which is that she did have a duty to make sure that she knew what was in that server. And the judge mischaracterized it, calling it an investigation. And, you know, I've spoken to a couple of attorneys and they keep telling me, hey, you know, don't feel bad because the judge would have found some other reason because that system is so corrupt. But Tina is wrongly imprisoned right now, and Jenna Griswold is the one who should be in jail for destroying those federal records. And in all the other counties of Colorado, guess what? No server images were taken. So nobody has any idea what was lost when she did that.
Hey, a couple of comments, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead. So we'll go around the horn here and then we'll wrap it up. But this has been a really good discussion. Yeah, go ahead.
So the first thing, don't forget that in addition to wiping the servers, Jenna Griswold is also the woman in Colorado who effectively publicly let the server password be known. For anybody that follows, you can see my my blog at the bottom, or my go to Unwoke Academy. I had the great pleasure of hosting Tina Peters as my guest for a special 4th of July episode 2024. Go back to Tina Peters, listen to the whole story from Tina Peters directly. My comment on the thing, and this just goes to the core of America and fighting for our freedoms, rights, and liberties. No nation can survive jailing whistleblowers. We talk a lot about the importance of our ability, when we see something, say something, call it out. That's not always some sort of clean, neat, easy thing that you just sort of take it to the New York Times, as heaven forbid I happen to feel that the New York Times would probably sneak it off to our enemies. I have no trust in New York Times. Our media is corrupted, etc. But my point in bringing that up is when you're in a position like that, put yourself for a moment in Tina Peters' shoes. And I think you can do that well and easily if you listen to that show with her as my guest. She talks about the steps that she took, her thought process, her reasoning behind it. But imagine yourself for a moment being in a position of a clerk overseeing elections, and you have a suspicion that bad actors may be going in to wipe out and blank the hard drives, and you have a legal duty and responsibility to maintain those records for 22 months. It's not some sort of clean, easy answer like you call somebody else, call a different person in IT. You're talking about federal elections, and who do you trust at that point? So the other element of this, when you go back, and I suggest people should do this, go back and at least watch the highlights of the court case. The case that took place in my book is third world, banana republic, kangaroo court garbage. What happened to Tina Peters in courts should never happen on American ground. Anybody who thinks that somehow that the incarceration of average citizens only takes place in places like Banana Republic, Third World, go watch the court case with Tina Peters. One last thing that I want to throw in there for personal perspective. In 2007, 2008, while working for Wall Street, I was asked to sign off on some things that called out a company you may have heard of called BlackRock. They were bypassing safeguards to protect pensions, billions of dollars of U.S. retirement savings. And effectively, by calling it out, to this day, I'm still technically in the wrong. I had to sign a letter agreeing that I would not harm or disparage. If you look it up, you can find that I'm the bad guy in an environment where I called out bad actors for doing bad things. And actually, you can see the proof that came out years later. Now everybody understands what BlackRock represents. In 2007, I saw billions of dollars flowing artificially into BlackRock that should not have gone there. I tried to be whistleblower, similar sort of a circumstance to Tina Peters. My point is that it can happen to any of us, and we need to be willing to fight through and stand up for what's right. Those are the comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Very good. I'll send it over to Brian. Brian, you have a last thought on anything?
Yeah, I would agree with what Jonathan is saying. We as citizens have to stand up for other citizens that are being abused by the system. With Marly, our guest, saying that it's not a state issue, it is a federal issue. I'm calling on our representative, Bernie Moreno, and all the other representatives and senators in Ohio, stand up for citizens, whether they're in our state or not. I'm asking President Donald Trump to pardon Tina Peters. It's gone on way too long.
Yep.
And if they can do it to Tina Peters, they can do it to any of us. Because as we are speaking out, in the state of Ohio, I dare say they've probably got some civil actions that they're going to throw at us just because we are fighting the system. When you're standing on the front lines and trying to do what is the best interest of the citizens of that state, it's just not right that the politicians can use and abuse the average citizen. So I would really support Tina Peters getting out of jail immediately.
Yep. There's a website, Free Tina Peters.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for these activists, and I don't have the whole story. I've only got the story from Grok, and that's the downside. And you're absolutely right. All Grok does is he will take all the news stories and mix them together and come up with something in the middle. President Trump has pardoned Tina Peters, but it's a state conviction. That's what I was saying. Trump really can't do anything, apparently. I could be wrong, but that's what I've heard. And so it's a state conviction. But any last thoughts, Marly?
He should have been able to do something. But again, the judge mischaracterized Tina Peters' actions, and in that moment, I think the attorney just got flustered and didn't fight that one all the way down to the mat, as I like to say. Understandably, it's a confusing topic, but at the same time, tragic, because there she is still in prison. I think it's also really important to remember that there was one other thing about Tina I wanted to bring up, because recently she was. Oh, this is what it was. That's right. Okay, so Colorado just prosecuted another official of the same stature as Tina Peters for the same crime, and it was treated as a misdemeanor, and the woman got a year of probation and community service, while Tina Peters got 9 years in prison. So
crazy.
Supposedly, Governor Polis is considering whether or not that's really the equal application of justice, but he doesn't seem to be in a big hurry to notice that it is a glaring inequity. So I think we do need to be out there and keep our voices really loud about getting Tina out and pointing out that Jenna Griswold is the one who broke the law most egregiously. And I want to thank John for bringing that point up also, that she posted those passwords on a website that anyone could access. So just insanity.
Yep.
I don't, in terms of closing, I think it's just really important what everyone has said. I want to echo it, which is, and especially the way that John put it, this is not some neat thing that we're right, and so we say the right thing out loud and then everything falls back into place. Our country is under attack, and nowhere is that more clear right now than in New York City, I would have to say. And we are planning some actions around that as well, just to be clear, not just letting that one lay, but we have to realize that this is not going to be an easy fight, and we cannot let up, and we cannot become discouraged. As soon as we become discouraged, our adversary gains territory, gains ground, and the election officials and the states gain our place, our turf inside of the Constitution, this issue of choosing representatives. We have to defend that, and we have to take it to the mat. That's the only place where they're going to finally be squeezed away from that territory. And that's even the way that the framers described the Constitution in the Federalist Papers, right? They said ambition has to be made to counter ambition. And of course, the states are ambitious over our congressional representation. What a prize, right? Our representatives oversee a multi-trillion-dollar budget and the greatest power on earth at this time. So why wouldn't they want to control those offices? And to Joe's point earlier, LaRose and many other secretaries of state they're typically in the position that they're in the Secretary of State position temporarily on their way to a better job in politics. So it's up to us to decide whether or not they get that better job, as long as the elections are fair. And that's what we have to keep fighting for. And whether we get the SAVE Act or not, remember this, if nothing else, the states promised to qualify voters according to state law before they register to them to the vote and before they give them a ballot. And that is a vow that hangs over the very top of our United States Constitution. If they're not upholding that vow, then we do not have a Republican form of government. And that is where our point of leverage is. And you go out there, everybody here go out there and you say, I just want to make sure you're upholding your promise. I want to make sure you're qualifying those voters. So if the SAVE Act doesn't pass and you don't have to have voter ID, I want to know how you're figuring out all these January 1st registrants, who they really are. I want to see those documents. I want to see it on paper, and I want to see it one by one. No more magic wands. And you'll get there, especially if you elect Marcel.
Well, we appreciate, really do appreciate you coming on tonight. It was great. You are one ball of fire. Nope, I don't want the applause. Wait a minute. I got to get it over to you. There you go. All right. Well, thank you. Keep up the great work. You're a true activist. You're a true patriot, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Marly. Thank you.
Thanks,
Marly.
you guys. Great to be on again.
Yep. Yep, when we'll have you on again. We're not going to wait years. All right, take care. We'll see you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.